It's been one of the foreign policy tropes of the Trump presidency that European NATO allies need to boost their defence spending.
I want Europe to pay. Germany pays 1%. They should be paying 4%. They're paying 1%. They should be paying even more than that.
European nations have stepped up their research and development into weapon systems away from the US defence industry, including a Franco-German plan to develop a new European fighter jet. But this doesn't sit well with Washington. In fact, the Trump government has sent a letter to the EU Foreign Policy Chief, Federica Mogherini, warning that the European Defence Cooperation, or PESCO, and the €13 billion European Defence Fund could fall foul of existing transatlantic military agreements.
The draft European Development Fund regulation and permanent structured cooperation general conditions represent a dramatic reversal of the last 3 decades of increased integration of the transatlantic defence sector.
It would seem that the European Union hadn't really understood what President Trump meant by spend more money on defence. Reading between the lines, it probably would have been clearer if he'd said, buy made in the USA. The letter to Mogherini also contained a, less than subtle threat should the EU continue down this path.
It's clear that similar reciprocally imposed US restrictions would not be welcomed by our European partners and allies, and we would not relish having to consider them in the future.
When you take a look at how much defence sales to European allies was worth to the US economy between the period of 2008 to 2018, it's clear to see why Washington isn't keen on a move away from the status quo. Germany spent $1 billion and took almost 2/3 of its foreign military imports from the United States. Norway, not an EU member of course, but a member of the NATO alliance, and Greece, they spent almost $1.5 billion, while Italy took over half of its foreign military imports from the US and spent close to $2 billion. The White House will, you would expect, also be watching closely how proposals for a European defence force backed by French President Emmanuel Macron and Chancellor Merkel here in Germany develop. Well, the EU reaction to the letter from the United States was to try and keep things calm.
The European Union is and remains open to US companies and equipment.
With Trump set to be in Europe next month, we can expect more calls to boost defence spending, as long, of course, as you buy from the United States. Peter Oliver, RT Berlin.
The former Vice President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the OSCE, Willy Wimmer, does say, though, that NATO would not be weakened by an EU army.
The threat is the ongoing war effort on the side of the United States. And therefore, when we come to reality in Europe, we have to be realistic about this question. The reality is that there was always pressure on the side of the United States to get military equipment from US sources. And this is nothing new when it comes to reality in NATO, where nobody sees a threat, at least not from other countries like India, China, or even the Russian Federation. And therefore it is policy inside the West, and therefore it is the behavior of somebody who sees Europe as a plunder area and not as a partner in cooperation.